I'm Michael Carpenter, and I've been clean for 14 years while running a chain of wellness centers across Texas worth $19 million. But my son's fiancée Rebecca had no idea what she was about to unleash when she called me street trash in front of 200 wedding guests at the Riverside Grand Hotel in Austin. What came next would reveal her entire sophisticated Boston family as hired performers costing $2,000 per person per day. When I investigated further, I discovered something that would shatter her fairy tale wedding in the most unexpected way imaginable. She had been concealing medication bottles in her designer handbag, literally dozens of them, prescribed by 5 different physicians across 3 states. The woman who labeled me broken for conquering substance abuse was secretly consuming pills throughout their entire courtship. When everything surfaced, her fabricated relatives literally fled the ceremony. Prescription bottles were scattered across the main wedding table. My son Daniel removed his wedding band and departed without looking back. But that was merely the opening act. What I uncovered about her elaborate financial operations had federal agents interviewing witnesses within 72 hours. If you're following this story, make sure you stay until the end, because you need to understand how one vicious insult at a wedding reception dismantled the most sophisticated deception I've encountered in my entire career. Let me explain how a man in recovery exposed a prescription drug addict and taught her the distinction between genuine integrity and manufactured wealth. Everything started 8 months before the ceremony. The initial time Rebecca attended family dinner at Daniel's place in downtown Austin. I remember walking through that door, carrying fresh flowers from the market. Rebecca was positioned on his leather sofa, and when I extended the bouquet toward her, she actually recoiled, as though I carried some contagious disease. "Daniel never mentioned you were stopping by tonight," she stated flatly, refusing to accept the flowers. My son appeared uncomfortable. "Dad, meet Rebecca. Rebecca, this is my father." She produced this artificial smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, right, the one with the history. The history." That was her terminology for 14 years of maintaining sobriety and building something meaningful. I placed the flowers on his kitchen counter. "Pleasure meeting you as well." Except it wasn't pleasurable at all. I noticed her examining my appearance from head to toe. Fresh denim jeans, pressed cotton shirt, leather work boots. Nothing extravagant, but certainly nothing inappropriate either. Her facial expression communicated disapproval. "Daniel mentioned your occupation involves construction work." "Rehabilitation, actually," I corrected her. "I operate wellness and recovery facilities throughout Texas." She nodded as though I had announced I managed waste disposal services. "That sounds like meaningful work." The manner in which she emphasized meaningful revealed everything I needed to know. This young woman considered me insignificant. Throughout the following months, the warning signals accumulated. Whenever I visited Daniel's apartment, Rebecca would vanish into the bedroom, clutching her purse tightly, seemingly concerned I might steal something valuable. When we dined at restaurants together, she insisted on divided checks. When I discussed my rehabilitation business, she redirected conversations immediately, but the most troubling aspect was watching her transform my son gradually. Daniel used to telephone me every Sunday morning without fail. We would discuss his position at the software development company, his 6 years of maintaining sobriety, general life matters. After Rebecca entered his life, those calls became irregular and brief. When we did communicate, he seemed withdrawn and distant. "Dad, perhaps you could minimize the recovery discussions." Around her, I was standing in my main office at the Hope Springs Recovery Campus in Austin. Through the large window, I could observe clients walking toward their group therapy sessions. Real human beings fighting genuine battles every single day. Minimize the recovery discussions. She just finds it somewhat intense. Her family maintains more privacy regarding personal struggles. Her family represented another concerning element. 8 months of dating, and I had never met any of them face to face. They resided in Boston, she explained. Established wealth, extremely private, perpetually occupied with business matters. What industry is her family involved in exactly? Various investments, commercial real estate development. Rebecca prefers not discussing it. She believes it's vulgar to talk about money openly. I disconnected that call feeling smaller than I had felt in years. Here I was operating 9 recovery facilities across Texas, providing employment for 230 people, helping thousands achieve sobriety and rebuild their lives. But to this young woman and her mysterious Boston family, I was simply a former addict who got fortunate. The breaking point arrived 4 weeks before the scheduled wedding date. I was at Daniel's apartment, helping him assemble new furniture. Rebecca was in the kitchen area, speaking on her cell phone with someone, her mother apparently. No, mother, you don't comprehend the situation. His father has this past, substance abuse issues. I understand, but what options do I have? Daniel is already emotionally invested. She was unaware I could hear every word. Well, at least we won't need to socialize with him extensively after the ceremony. I've arranged for him to sit at table 15, in the rear section, adjacent to the catering entrance. Table 15, adjacent to the catering entrance. I had been in recovery long enough to recognize when someone was attempting to make me feel ashamed of my journey. But I had also been in business long enough to recognize when someone was being dishonest, because here is what never made sense about Rebecca's family background. If they were genuinely wealthy and established in Boston society, why had I never seen a single photograph of them anywhere? Why did all their social media profiles appear recently created? And why, when I casually searched their surname plus Boston real estate, did absolutely nothing appear in the results? Most people would overlook these inconsistencies. Most people would sit quietly at table 15 and keep their opinions to themselves, but most people haven't spent 14 years learning that remaining silent about problems only allows them to grow worse. It was time to conduct some investigation. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at Riverside Grand Hotel. $30,000 for the entire weekend, Daniel informed me proudly. Rebecca's family was covering all expenses. Naturally, I sat in my vehicle, in the parking area, staring at the illuminated building. Through the windows, I could see elegantly dressed people mingling with champagne flutes. Rebecca's family had traveled from Boston that morning, all 7 of them, mother, father, grandmother, 2 aunts and 2 cousins. I would finally meet the people who believed I belonged at table 15 in the back corner. But sitting there in my truck, something my sponsor Thomas told me years ago returned to mind. Marcos, the worst aspect of addiction isn't the substances themselves. It's allowing people to make you feel like you deserve less than basic respect and dignity. If I remained quiet tonight, what message was I sending? To Daniel, that it was acceptable to allow his future wife to disrespect his father. To myself, that 14 years of sobriety and building a successful business meant nothing if the wrong person disapproved. To every single client who walked through my recovery center doors, that shame never truly disappears. The stakes extended beyond personal matters now. I thought about Jennifer, a 26-year-old client who had been clean for 8 months. She told me last week, Mr. Carpenter, I'm terrified my boyfriend's family will discover my past. What if they force him to choose? I told her what I always told clients facing similar situations. Your past is part of your journey, not your entire identity. Anyone who cannot see your value doesn't deserve your presence in their life. Now here I was either taking my own advice or failing to follow it. I retrieved my phone and looked at the text message I had received that afternoon from Dr. Amanda Chen, my business partner, at the recovery centers. Amanda and I had built this organization together over the past decade, combining her medical expertise with my lived experience and business knowledge. Marcos, you asked me to investigate something quietly. Call me immediately. We need to discuss what I found. I had asked Amanda for a favor. 4 weeks ago, right after overhearing Rebecca's telephone conversation about Table 15, Amanda had professional connections in Boston from her medical training at Massachusetts General Hospital. I had asked her to make some discreet inquiries about Rebecca's family background and their supposed real estate business. The fact that she was texting instead of calling meant she had discovered something significant and sensitive. But did I genuinely want to know what she had found? Walking into that rehearsal dinner meant confronting the consequences of my curiosity. If Amanda had uncovered something damaging about Rebecca's family, I would need to decide what to do with that information carefully. I could ignore it completely, sit at table 15, allow my son to marry someone who looked down on me with contempt, pretend the last 14 years of rebuilding my life meant absolutely nothing. Or I could use whatever Amanda had discovered, risk my relationship with Daniel permanently, risk appearing like the bitter father who couldn't accept his son's happiness. But there was a third possibility I hadn't considered until that precise moment. What if this wasn't about me at all? What if Rebecca was concealing something that could seriously harm Daniel's future? What if her contempt for people in recovery wasn't just snobbery, but psychological projection? I had witnessed it countless times in group therapy sessions. The loudest voices condemning addiction often belong to people fighting their own demons privately. My phone vibrated with a text, Daniel asking, "Dad, where are you? Dinner starts in 15 minutes. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. 53 years old, 14 years clean, 9 recovery centers, hundreds of employees, thousands of lives changed through our programs. But none of that mattered if I didn't stand up for it when challenged. I thought about my late wife, Caroline. Breast cancer took her 11 years ago, but before she passed, she made me promise something important. Don't ever let anyone make you forget how far you've traveled and what you've accomplished. If Caroline were here right now, she would tell me to walk into that rehearsal dinner with my head held high. She would remind me that respect isn't something you request politely. It's something you command by living with dignity and integrity. The choice wasn't really about Rebecca anymore. It was about whether I believed in my own recovery story and the life I had built. I called Amanda back immediately. "Marcos, thank God you called. Listen carefully. You were absolutely right to be suspicious about this situation. Rebecca's family, they're not who they claim to be at all." "What do you mean exactly?" "I mean they don't exist the way she has described them to Daniel. The real estate business, the established Boston wealth, the social connections, it's all completely fabricated." My heart started pounding harder. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" "I'm looking at casting agency contracts right now as we speak. Her entire family are professional actors, Marcos, hired performers for your son's wedding. The stakes had just changed completely and dramatically. This wasn't about a snobbish future daughter-in-law anymore. This was about my son marrying someone who had constructed their entire relationship on elaborate lies. And suddenly, sitting at table 15 didn't seem so terrible. It would give me the perfect vantage point to watch everything collapse. I walked into that rehearsal dinner with Amanda's words echoing through my mind. Professional actors, casting agency contracts, elaborate fabrication. But I needed to approach this intelligently. Accusations without solid proof would make me appear desperate and vindictive. So I decided to test my theory carefully. The first person I approached was Rebecca's father, a distinguished gentleman in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive tailored suit. "You must be Richard," I said, extending my hand professionally. "I'm Marcos, Daniel's father." He smiled warmly and shook my hand. Wonderful to finally meet you in person. Rebecca has told us so much about you and Daniel. I'm certain she has. So you're in commercial real estate development? Primarily Boston markets, I understand. A slight pause before responding. Yes, various regions actually. Greater Boston area primarily. I nodded thoughtfully. My recovery centers work with numerous commercial developers for our facility. Expansions. Perhaps we know some of the same people in the industry. What's your company called? Another pause, noticeably longer this time. Hartwell Properties. We maintain a fairly boutique operation. Hartwell Properties. I made a mental note to search that later, though I suspected I wouldn't discover much online. And how long have you been operating the business? 26 years this coming spring. Interesting. Very specific time frame for someone who seemed uncomfortable with basic questions. I moved on to Rebecca's mother, an elegant woman wearing jewelry that looked expensive but somehow new, like it hadn't been worn extensively. Margaret, correct? That's a beautiful necklace you're wearing. She touched it reflexively, almost nervously. Thank you so much. It's been in the family for several generations. Really? It appears to be Cartier. Recent collection, if I'm not mistaken. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a moment. Oh no, it's much older than that. European. Origins. My late wife Caroline loved jewelry collecting. She had an exceptional eye for provenance and authenticity. May I look closer? I leaned in to examine the necklace carefully, and there it was clearly visible. A tiny Cartier hallmark that anyone who had spent time in fine jewelry stores would immediately recognize. Recent manufacture, definitely not vintage. Absolutely gorgeous piece, I said pleasantly. Your family has excellent taste in jewelry. The evening continued like this, small. Conversations, gentle probing, watching carefully for inconsistencies in their stories. Rebecca's uncle claimed to be a wine collector, but mispronounced Burgundy. Her aunt said she summered in Martha's Vineyard, but didn't know which towns were actually located there. The cousin claimed to have attended Harvard, but couldn't name a single residential house. But the real test came when I sat down directly next to Rebecca herself at the table. Your family seems absolutely wonderful, I said casually. They truly are very accomplished people. Your father mentioned Hartwell Properties earlier. I searched for them on my phone. Interesting that there's no company website anywhere. Rebecca's jaw tightened slightly, almost imperceptibly. Their extremely private, old-school business approach, of course, and your mother's jewelry collection is quite impressive. Family heirlooms passed down through generations. That Cartier necklace, especially the Love collection, right? That came out just last year. Now her face went noticeably pale. It's not Cartier, actually. Oh, I'm quite certain it is. My wife used to bring me to Cartier constantly. I recognize that specific setting immediately. Rebecca stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. She was rattled significantly. Good. But Daniel noticed our conversation from across the large room. He came over looking concerned and confused. Dad, is everything all right? You look like you're interrogating people. At my rehearsal dinner, just getting to know your future in-laws better, Rebecca seemed upset after talking with you. I looked at my son carefully, really looked at him. 6 years sober, excellent job, happy. Or at least he had been before this relationship started consuming his life entirely. Daniel, can I ask you something important? How well do you actually know Rebecca's family? What do you mean by that? I mean, have you spent significant time with them, visited their home in Boston, met their friends and business associates? Daniel frowned, looking uncomfortable. They're very busy and private people. How exactly did you meet Rebecca initially? At a professional conference in Houston, she was representing her family's charitable foundation. What foundation specifically? The Hartwell Foundation. They do extensive charity work, apparently. Another mental note. I would be researching that tonight as well. And you've never traveled to Boston to visit them. Rebecca prefers we keep our relationship separate from family business matters. She says it's cleaner that way professionally, cleaner or harder to verify independently. That's when Rebecca returned from the bathroom, and I could tell she had been making phone calls. She looked composed again, superficially, but there was something different in her eyes now. Fear, perhaps. She walked straight up to me deliberately. Marcos, I think we should clear the air about something. About what, exactly? About your attitude toward my family members. I don't have an attitude. I'm just naturally curious about the people my son is marrying into. No, you're being suspicious and paranoid, and frankly, it's completely inappropriate behavior. Her voice was getting louder now. Other guests were starting to notice and turn toward us, suspicious of what exactly? Of people who come from a different background than you. There it was finally, the class card being played. Different how specifically? Educated, established, successful in legitimate business. You think I'm not successful? I think you're threatened by people who didn't have to claw their way up from nothing like you did. The conversations around us were stopping completely now. This was becoming a scene. Claw my way up from what exactly? From addiction, from failure, from being the kind of person no respectable family wants associated with them. Complete silence in the room now. Every guest was watching us. Daniel stepped forward quickly. Rebecca, that's enough. Stop this right now. But she wasn't finished at all. No, Daniel, this needs to be said directly. Your father clearly resents that my family has standards and expectations, that we don't think his past makes him qualified to judge us. Judge you how? By acting like we're somehow fake or suspicious just because we have class and breeding. I stayed completely calm. 14 years of recovery teaches you that angry responses usually prove the other person's point. I never said you were fake. You implied it with your questions and your skepticism and your attitude. I asked about your father's business and your mother's jewelry. Normal conversation. Normal for someone looking for problems where none exist. She was breathing hard now, clearly agitated and defensive. And that's when I realized something important. Rebecca wasn't just acting defensive, she was acting guilty about something. The rehearsal dinner ended extremely awkwardly after Rebecca's outburst. People tried to pretend. Nothing had happened, but you could feel the tension in every forced smile and stilted conversation attempt. Daniel walked me to my truck, looking frustrated and torn. Dad, what was that about back there? Your fiancée doesn't like being asked simple questions. She's just protective of her family. They value their privacy highly. I unlocked my truck door slowly. Daniel, in 14 years of recovery, I've learned that people who get angry about simple questions usually have something significant to hide. Are you seriously psychoanalyzing my relationship right now? I'm trying to look out for my son. Daniel ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Dad, I know you mean well, but Rebecca's right about something. You have been different ever since she came into the picture. More suspicious, more judgmental, or more experienced with recognizing deception. With what exactly? I paused, choosing my words carefully. With people who aren't what they seem to be. Daniel stared at me for a long moment. Are you seriously saying my fiancé is lying to me? I'm saying that in 24 hours you're marrying someone whose family you've never visited, whose business you've never seen, whose friends you've never met. Doesn't that seem unusual to you? It seems private. Not everyone broadcasts their entire life publicly. There's a significant difference between private and secretive. Daniel shook his head. I can't do this tonight, Dad. The wedding is tomorrow. Can we please just get through it? Without more drama? I hugged my son goodbye tightly, but as I drove home, my phone kept buzzing continuously with text messages. The first was from Dr. Amanda Chen. Marcos, I have significantly more information. Can you meet me early tomorrow before the wedding ceremony? The second was from Robert Martinez, a private investigator I had worked with before when we had theft issues at one of the recovery centers. Got your message. Very interesting case. Can we talk tonight? The third was from Daniel. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. I love you. I just want everything to be perfect tomorrow. I sat in my driveway for a while staring at those messages. Amanda had found something significant enough to want a face-to-face meeting. Robert had discovered something interesting about the case, and my son wanted everything to be perfect for a wedding built on what I increasingly suspected were elaborate lies. I thought about calling the whole thing off, just showing up tomorrow, sitting at table 15, keeping my mouth shut. But then I remembered something from my early recovery days. My sponsor Thomas used to say, Marcos, the difference between being clean and being in recovery is taking action. Clean is passive. Recovery is active. It means doing the right thing even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult and uncomfortable. I called Amanda back immediately. Marcos, thank God. Listen, I've been digging much deeper into the Hartwell family situation. It's significantly worse than I initially thought. How much worse? The casting agency has detailed emails, specific instructions about family background, business history, even specific conversation topics to avoid at all costs. This isn't just hired actors for a wedding weekend. This is a months-long performance they've been rehearsing. My stomach dropped. What kind of instructions specifically? Things like, if asked about real estate specifics, redirect to wine or travel topics immediately. And remember, the father character doesn't discuss business details with outsiders under any circumstances. It's like a complete script they're following. What else, Amanda? The payments. Someone's been paying Prestige Performance Agency $2,000 per day per actor for 4 months of preparation. That's not wedding weekend money. That's relationship building money. I felt sick. Daniel had been dating these people for months, thinking they were his future family. Amanda, who's paying them exactly? That's the thing. The payments come from an account registered to R. Morrison Financial Services, but when I looked up R. Morrison, it's a shell company. No physical address, no employees, no legitimate business activity whatsoever. R. Morrison. Rebecca's last name was Morrison, so Rebecca is paying actors to pretend to be her family for months, Marcos. This isn't about impressing people at a wedding. This is about creating an entire false identity and background. I hung up and immediately called Robert Martinez. Robert, please tell me you found something concrete. Oh, I found something all right. Your future daughter-in-law isn't just paying for fake family members. She's got some very real secrets of her own. What kind of secrets? The kind that involve 5 different doctors and a lot of prescription bottles. My blood went cold. Are you absolutely sure? Pharmacy records don't lie, Marcos. She's been doctor shopping for 9 months. OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall, Xanax. Classic pattern of prescription drug abuse. So there it was, finally. The woman who had called me street trash for being a former addict was currently using prescription drugs illegally. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't about to destroy my son's life completely. Saturday arrived with perfect Texas weather. Sunny, 80 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. The kind of day that makes you believe good things are supposed to happen. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie carefully. The same black suit I had worn to every important occasion for the past 6 years. The same one Rebecca had mocked as cheap and inappropriate for the social circles we move in now. Today, it would have to suffice. Amanda had called at 7 that morning. Marcos, I'm bringing everything to the wedding. Photographs, contracts, financial records, pharmacy printouts. Whatever you decide to do with this information is entirely up to you. Robert had texted an hour later. Additional evidence secured. We'll be at venue by 6 p.m. if needed, but the most important message came from Daniel at 8:30. Dad, I love you. Thank you for being here today. I know Rebecca and you got off on the wrong foot, but I really think you two will learn to appreciate each other eventually. Appreciate each other, if only he knew the truth. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock at Riverside Grand Hotel. I arrived early and found my assigned seat. Sure enough, table 15 in the back corner near the catering. Entrance close enough to the kitchen that I could hear dishes clattering and servers talking loudly. But you know what? Table 15 had an excellent view of the entire room. The other guests began arriving around 3:30. Rebecca's family entered together, dressed impeccably and playing their roles perfectly. Her father greeted other guests with confident handshakes. Her mother air-kissed acquaintances with practiced elegance. They were genuinely good actors, I had to admit. But I noticed things other people missed, like how none of them seemed to know any of the other guests personally. They introduced themselves repeatedly to the same people, and when conversations moved beyond surface pleasantries, they had a remarkable ability to redirect topics immediately. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Daniel looked handsome in his tuxedo, genuinely happy as he waited at the altar. Rebecca was stunning in a dress that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, I stayed silent. This wasn't the time or place for confrontation. Some battles require patience and timing. But the reception, that was different. The reception was where people give toasts, where they speak publicly about the couple, their families, their future together, where lies become significantly harder to maintain. Dinner was served at 7. I ate my salmon and watched the room carefully, noting how Rebecca's family kept checking their phones, how they seemed more focused on their performances than the actual celebration. At 8 o'clock, the toasts began. Daniel's best man spoke first, a sweet speech about friendship and finding the right person. Then Rebecca's father stood up confidently. Ladies and gentlemen, when my daughter Rebecca first told us about Daniel, we knew she had found someone truly special, the kind of young man any family would be proud to welcome. Polite applause throughout the room. I wondered how many rehearsals that toast had required. Our family has always valued integrity, hard work, and treating people with dignity and respect. We're absolutely delighted that Rebecca has found those qualities in Daniel. More applause. The irony was almost physically painful, but then Rebecca herself stood up for a toast and everything changed dramatically. Thank you all for being here on our special day. Daniel and I are so grateful for your love and support. She paused, looking around the room with a smile that seemed forced and artificial. I especially want to thank both our families for their guidance in bringing us together. Marriage is about joining two families, not just two people. Her eyes found me across the room deliberately. Of course, not all families are the same. Some have histories they're proud of. Others have complications they'd rather forget. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't typical wedding toast material. Daniel's father, for example, has overcome significant challenges in his past, addiction specifically. The room went completely quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Now, I want to be clear. We don't judge people for their mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance. But her tone suggested otherwise completely. However, there are certain standards that families like ours maintain, certain expectations about the kind of people we associate with socially and professionally. Daniel looked mortified. He stood up quickly. Rebecca, maybe we should. No, honey, this needs to be said directly. Your father has made some inappropriate comments about my family, questioning our background, our business, our legitimacy. She turned to look directly at me. So I want to make something crystal clear to everyone here. My family built their success through 3 generations of hard work, education, and ethical business practices. We didn't have to claw our way up from rock bottom because we never fell to rock bottom in the first place. The silence was absolutely deafening. We understand that not everyone has been so fortunate, and we're willing to overlook certain deficiencies for Daniel's sake, but we will not tolerate disrespect from people who should be grateful just to be included in civilized society. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from the effort it took to stay completely calm. She wasn't done yet. So while we welcome Daniel's father into our extended family, we hope he understands that there are boundaries. Social boundaries, professional boundaries, and personal boundaries that people from our background simply cannot cross. She raised her champagne glass high. To new beginnings, high standards, and the importance of knowing your place in the world. Half the room raised their glasses awkwardly. The other half sat in stunned silence. Daniel's face was bright red with embarrassment. "Rebecca, sit down now." But the damage was done. She had just publicly humiliated me in front of 200 people, using my recovery, the thing I was most proud of, as a weapon against me. That's when I saw her. Dr. Amanda Chen entered the reception hall through a side door. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. It was time to reveal the truth. I stood up slowly, and the room turned to look at me. Rebecca was still standing, champagne glass in hand, looking triumphant. "Rebecca," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "that was quite a speech you just delivered." "Thank you," she said smugly. "Very." "Revealing," I replied. Her smile faltered slightly. "I'd like to propose a toast of my own, if you don't mind." Daniel shook his head frantically, but I was already walking toward the front of the room. "Actually," I said, "I'd like to toast your family specifically, your remarkable family business." Rebecca's father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "But first, I think our guests would be interested in learning a little more about the people they're celebrating with tonight." I pulled out my phone. "Dr. Chen, would you mind joining us? I believe you have some information that might interest everyone here." Amanda walked to the front of the room carrying a large manila folder. The actors, because that's what they were, suddenly looked extremely nervous. And Rebecca, she had gone completely pale. Dr. Amanda Chen walked to the front of the room with the confidence of someone who had delivered difficult news to families for 20 years. She set her folder on the head table and looked out at the 200 guests. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Amanda Chen, Marcos's business partner at Hope Springs Recovery Centers." Rebecca was still standing, champagne glass trembling in her hand. "This is highly inappropriate. This is our wedding reception." "You're absolutely right," I said. "A wedding reception should be about celebrating the union of two families. So let's talk about families." Amanda opened her folder. 4 weeks ago, Marcos asked me to do some research on Rebecca's family background. As a medical professional and business owner, I have access to certain databases and professional networks. Rebecca's father started to stand up. "Now see here. Please sit down, Mr. Patterson," Amanda said calmly. The man froze completely. "My name isn't Patterson. No, it's not. Your name is George Patterson, and you're a character actor represented by Prestige Performance Agency in Los Angeles." A gasp went through the crowd. Amanda pulled out a photograph. "This is your headshot from their website. You specialize in distinguished gentleman roles for corporate videos and theater productions." She held up another photo. "And this lovely woman isn't Margaret Hartwell. She's Linda Foster, also from Prestige Performance Agency. Her specialty is elegant society matron characters." Rebecca's mother had gone white as a sheet. "The entire Hartwell family," Amanda continued, "are professional actors hired to play roles at this wedding. I have their contracts right here." She pulled out a thick stack of papers. $2,000 per day per actor for 4 months of preparation. Total cost approximately $90,000. The room erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Stephanie finally found her voice. "This is insane! These people are lying!" "Am I?" Amanda asked. She pulled out her phone. "Mr. Patterson, sorry, Mr. Hartwell. What's your company's address in Boston?" The man who had been playing Rebecca's father looked around desperately. We don't give out business addresses to strangers." "How? About your company's phone number?" Silence. "Or the name of a single project your development company has completed?" More silence. Amanda turned to the woman playing Rebecca's mother. "Mrs. Hartwell, tell us about your family's jewelry collection, specifically that Cartier necklace you're wearing." The woman's hand flew to her throat. "It's not Cartier." Amanda pulled out a receipt. According to this sales record, it was purchased from Cartier 5th Avenue 3 days ago for $12,000. Charged to a credit card registered to R. Morrison Financial Services. The room was buzzing now. Guests were pulling out their phones, probably searching Prestige Performance Agency and R. Morrison Financial Services. Daniel stood up, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. "Rebecca, what is this? What's going on?" Rebecca's composure was cracking visibly. "It's a misunderstanding. These people are confused. Am I confused about this?" Amanda held up another document. "This is an email thread between you and Prestige Performance Agency dated 5 months ago. The subject line is Extended Family Portrayal Services." She began reading aloud. "Need 7 actors to portray wealthy Boston family members for important social events. Must be convincing in roles of parents, grandmother, aunts, and cousins. Background story, real estate development family, established wealth, very private about business details. The fake uncle, a man in his 50s who had been charming everyone all evening, suddenly stood up and headed for the exit. Leaving so soon? I called after him. He kept walking. The fake cousin followed, then the fake aunts. Within minutes, 5 of Rebecca's 7 family members had fled the reception. Only the fake parents remained, looking like deer in headlights. "This is impossible," Rebecca said, but her voice was shaking. "You're making all of this up." That's when Robert Martinez appeared at the back of the room. I had texted him during Amanda's presentation. "Robert," I called out. "Perfect timing. Did you bring those pharmacy records we discussed?" Robert walked forward carrying his own folder. "Rebecca Morrison. I'm Robert Martinez, licensed private investigator. I've been researching your background for the past week." "You have no right," Rebecca said. "Actually, I do. Prescription drug database is a part of public health monitoring systems, and you've been very busy." He opened his folder. 5 different doctors, 8 different pharmacies, 9 months of prescription. Shopping. Robert began reading from a list. Dr. Martinez at Austin Pain Management, 90 OxyContin, prescribed for chronic back pain. Dr. Stevens at Houston Family Medicine, 60 Percocet, prescribed for dental surgery recovery. Dr. Thompson at Dallas Medical Center. "Stop," Rebecca screamed. "Just stop this." But Robert continued calmly. Dr. Wilson at San Antonio Wellness Clinic, 120 Adderall, prescribed for adult ADHD. Interesting thing about that one. You filled it at 4. Different pharmacies in the same week. The room was dead silent except for Rebecca's heavy breathing. The total, Robert looked up, 240 pills in the past 2 months alone. That's not medication management. That's substance abuse. Daniel sank into his chair, his head in his hands. "So let me understand this," I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. "The woman who just gave a speech about families with standards, who called me street trash for being a former addict, who said I should be grateful just to be included in civilized society. That woman is currently abusing prescription drugs illegally while paying actors to pretend to be her family." Rebecca was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. I needed them. The pressure, the planning, everything had to be perfect. Perfect." I walked closer to her. You built your entire relationship with my son on lies. You've been high for most of your courtship, and you just humiliated me for overcoming the exact same disease you're suffering from right now. It's not the same, she whispered. You're right, it's not the same. I got help. I got clean. I built a life helping other people recover. You hired actors and stole pills. Daniel finally looked up. Rebecca, is this true? All of it. She couldn't speak. She just stood there, tears ruining her makeup, her perfect wedding dress suddenly looking like a costume. The wedding is off, Daniel said quietly. Tommy, please. The wedding is off, he repeated. Louder this time. Everyone, I'm sorry, but there's not going to be a marriage today. Rebecca's remaining fake parents, the actors, chose that moment to make their exit, practically running for the door. The real guests sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to leave or stay or start taking photographs. The reception hall had become absolute chaos. Guests were whispering frantically, some taking photos, others calling relatives to report the drama. The wedding coordinator was trying to figure out what to do with the cake, the band, the flowers, but I wasn't done yet. Rebecca, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Before everyone leaves, I think there's one more thing our guests should know. She looked up at me through tears and smeared mascara. Please, haven't you done enough? Robert, I called to the private investigator. That other information you mentioned about the prescription fraud investigation? Robert nodded grimly. The Texas State Board D of Pharmacy has been tracking unusual prescription patterns for 9 months. Your name flagged their system 4 weeks ago. Stephanie's face went chalk white. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means, Robert explained, that obtaining controlled substances through deception, using multiple doctors, or filling prescriptions at multiple pharmacies to avoid detection are all felonies under Texas law. Felonies, Rebecca whispered. Class 3 felonies specifically, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The remaining wedding. Guests were riveted now. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a criminal matter unfolding in real time. Dr. Amanda Chen stepped forward. Rebecca, as a medical professional, I'm required to report suspected prescription drug abuse to the appropriate authorities, especially when it involves illegal procurement methods. You can't do this to me, Rebecca said, but her voice was breaking. My career, my reputation. Your career? I interrupted. What career? You mean the fake charity work you claim to do for your family's fake foundation? Amanda pulled out another document. The Hartwell Foundation doesn't exist either. The website was created 7 months ago using stock photos and plagiarized content from legitimate charities. Even your supposed job is completely fabricated, Robert added. There's no record of employment anywhere, no tax returns showing legitimate income. The only money in your accounts comes from credit card advances and a personal loan you took out using fraudulent financial statements. Daniel stood up slowly, his face a mixture of heartbreak and anger. So nothing was real? Nothing at all? Rebecca reached for him desperately. Daniel, please, I can explain everything. Explain what? His voice was getting louder. That you've been lying to me for 8 months, that you're addicted to pills, that you hired actors to pretend to be your family, that you're facing felony charges. I was going to get help, she sobbed. After the wedding, I was going to get clean. Like you were going to tell me about your fake family. I was scared. I thought if you knew the truth. Daniel was shouting now. The truth is you're exactly what you accuse my father of being, except he got help and built something real. You just built more lies on top of lies. That's when Rebecca's handbag, which had been sitting on the head table, suddenly tipped over. Pills scattered across the white tablecloth, dozens of them. OxyContin, Percocet, Adderall, Xanax, exactly as Robert had described. The symbolism was perfect, all her secrets spilling out in front of everyone. Several guests gasped audibly. Someone took a photo. The wedding coordinator looked like she might faint. "Jesus Christ, Rebecca," Daniel said, staring at the pills. "You brought drugs to our wedding. I needed them. The stress, the anxiety, the pressure. You needed them because you're an addict," I said quietly, "just like I was. But instead of getting help, you decided to attack me for being honest about my disease." Pastor Michael Rodriguez, who had been standing quietly near the altar, stepped forward. "Rebecca, I think you need help. Real help. Not a wedding, not more lies, but actual treatment." "I don't need treatment," she said, but she was already gathering up the pills with shaking hands. "I need everyone to mind their own business." "This became everyone's business when you made that toast," I replied. "When you publicly humiliated me for being in recovery while secretly using yourself." Dr. Chen approached Rebecca gently. "I run an intervention program at Austin Medical Center. We can get you into treatment tonight if you're willing." "I'm not going anywhere," Rebecca snapped, stuffing pills back into her purse. "This is my wedding day." "No," Daniel said firmly. "This was going to be our wedding day. Now it's the day I found out I don't know you at all." He pulled off his wedding ring and set it on the table next to the scattered pills. Daniel waited. But he was already walking away, and this time he didn't look back. Robert Martinez approached Rebecca with a business card. "I've already filed my report with the State Pharmacy Board. You'll probably be hearing from investigators within 72 hours. You need a lawyer and you need treatment," Dr. Chen added, "before this gets significantly worse." Rebecca looked around the room at the 200 guests who had just witnessed her complete downfall. Some were already leaving. Others were still taking pictures. A few were searching. Prescription drug fraud penalties on their phones. "This is all your fault," she said to me, her voice venomous. "If you had just minded your own business." "If I had minded my own business," I interrupted, "my son would have married someone living a complete lie. Someone who is sick and refuses to admit it. Someone who thinks the solution to addiction is to attack other people in recovery." I walked over to where Daniel was standing by the exit, looking shell-shocked. "Son, I'm sorry this happened, but—" "I'm not sorry you found out the truth." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Dad, how did you know? 14 years of recovery teaches you to recognize the signs. The anger, the defensiveness, the projection. She was accusing me of everything she was guilty of herself." Daniel hugged me then, really hugged me for the first time in months. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let her treat you that way. You don't need to apologize for caring about someone even when they don't deserve it." Behind us, Rebecca was arguing with the wedding coordinator about refunds. The fake parents had long since disappeared. The pills were still scattered on the head table like evidence at a crime scene. It was the most expensive lesson in truth I had ever witnessed. The aftermath of the wedding that wasn't spread faster than wildfire in our recovery community. By Sunday morning, my phone was buzzing with calls from clients, colleagues, and friends who had heard what happened. Word travels fast. When someone publicly attacks addiction recovery and then gets exposed as an active user, Dr. Chen called first. "Marcos, I wanted you to know Rebecca checked herself into Riverside Treatment Center last night." "Good. That's the right choice." "It is, but I also wanted to tell you that 5 of our current clients called me yesterday. They heard about what happened and wanted to share their own stories about family members who judged their recovery. That was the part I hadn't expected. The ripple. Yvette, Jennifer, the 26-year-old I had been working with, left a voicemail. "Mr. Carpenter, I heard what happened at your son's wedding. I just wanted to say thank you for standing up for all of us. My boyfriend's parents have been giving me grief about my past, and seeing how you handled it gives me courage to set my own boundaries." 4 other clients called with similar messages. Suddenly, this wasn't just about my family drama. It had become a teaching moment for people struggling with Shame and stigma. Daniel came to see me Sunday afternoon. He looked exhausted but clearer somehow, like a fog had lifted. "Dad, I need to ask you something. How long did you know?" I made us coffee and sat down across from him at my kitchen table. I suspected for weeks, but I didn't have proof until Amanda's investigation confirmed it. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Probably not. I had to let you see it for yourself. Otherwise I would. Have been the bitter father trying to sabotage his son's happiness. I feel like such an idiot. 8 months of my life wasted on someone who was lying about everything." "Not wasted," I said. "You learned something important about yourself, about what you're willing to accept and what you're not." Daniel nodded slowly. "She's going to be in treatment for 60 days minimum. Her lawyer called this morning. Apparently the pharmacy board investigation is moving forward regardless." "Good. Actions have consequences for all of us." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the local news website. The headline read, "Recovery Center Owner Exposes Wedding Fraud, Bride's Prescription Drug Abuse." "Someone at the wedding was a journalist," I explained. "The story has gone viral on social media." Daniel's eyes widened. "Is that bad for business?" "Actually, no. We've had 18 calls since yesterday from people asking about our programs. Apparently seeing someone stand up for recovery values resonates with families dealing with addiction. But there were other consequences too. Monday morning, Robert Martinez called with an update. "Marcos, thought you should know. The FBI is looking into R. Morrison Financial Services. Turns out Rebecca's shell company was used for more than just paying actors." "What do you mean?" "Money laundering, possibly. She was funneling cash through multiple accounts to hide the source of her funds. The wedding fraud might be the least of her legal problems." That afternoon, Dr. Chen stopped by my office with more news. "The actors are cooperating with investigators. Apparently Rebecca hired them for more than just your son's wedding. She's been using fake family members for business meetings, social events, even job interviews for the past year. How is that even possible? She's been living in a complete fantasy. The deeper we dig, the more elaborate the deception becomes." But perhaps the most significant consequence came Wednesday, when Pastor Michael Rodriguez called. "Marcos, I've been thinking about what happened at the wedding. Would you be willing to speak at our community addiction forum next month?" "About what?" "About standing up to stigma, about not letting shame define your recovery. We have a lot of families dealing with these issues." That's when I realized the real impact of what had happened. It wasn't just about exposing one person's lies. It was about refusing to accept that recovery makes you somehow less worthy of respect. Thursday brought a call from the Texas Department of Health Services. "Mr. Carpenter, we understand you were instrumental in identifying a case of prescription drug fraud. We'd like to discuss having your recovery centers participate in our new monitoring program." By Friday, 4 other recovery center owners had reached out wanting to know how we had handled the situation. Apparently, addiction shaming by family members was more common than I had realized. The most surprising consequence came Saturday morning when Rebecca's real mother called. "Mr. Carpenter, this is Patricia Morrison, Rebecca's actual mother. I live in Maine. I wanted to apologize for my daughter's behavior and thank you for getting her into treatment." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. Rebecca has been lying to us for over a year. We thought she was doing well in Texas, working for a charity, dating a nice young man. We had no idea about the pills, the fake family, any of it." She paused. "We've been trying to get her help for years, but she kept insisting she was fine. Maybe now she'll finally accept that she needs recovery." It turned out the most important consequence wasn't punishment. It was the possibility of healing. 4 months later, I was sitting in my office when Daniel knocked on the door. "Dad, got a minute?" He looked different, lighter somehow, like he had been carrying a weight he had finally set down. "Always. How are you doing?" Better, I started going to Al-Anon meetings, learning about enabling, codependency, all that stuff. I smiled. How's that going? Hard, but good. I'm realizing I ignored a lot of red flags because I wanted to believe Rebecca was who she claimed to be. Daniel sat down across from my desk. I also wanted to tell you something. Rebecca has been in treatment for 120 days now. She's doing the work. Apparently her counselor says she's finally being honest about her addiction. That's good news. She wrote me a letter apologizing for everything. She asked if I would consider giving her another chance when she gets out. I kept my expression neutral. What did you tell her? That I appreciate the apology, but I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship that was built on lies. How do you feel about that decision? Sad, but clear. I deserve someone who tells me the truth, even when it's difficult. We sat quietly for a moment. Dad, I owe you an apology too, for not believing you, for letting her disrespect you, for asking you to tone down your recovery. You don't owe me anything, Daniel. You were trying to make a relationship work. That's not a character flaw, but I should have stood up for you sooner. Maybe, but you stood up for me when it mattered most. Daniel nodded. I've been thinking about what you said that night, about the difference between private and secretive. I want to make sure I never ignore that distinction again. Good. That's wisdom earned the hard way. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Dad, I'm proud of how you handled everything. You could have destroyed her publicly, but you just told the truth and let people draw their own conclusions. After he left, I sat there thinking about boundaries, about the difference between shame and accountability, about how recovery isn't just about getting clean. It's about learning to live with dignity. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, my 26-year-old client. Mr. Carpenter set boundaries with boyfriend's family. They respect my recovery. Now, thank you for showing us how. 14 years ago, I thought recovery was about not using drugs. Now I know it's about not accepting less than you deserve. If you're struggling with addiction stigma from family or friends, remember your past doesn't define your worth. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of getting help. And if you're in recovery yourself, stand up for it. The more we speak up, the less power shame has over any of us. Thank you for listening.